Hello, I'm Lindsay Von Tisch, and we're back with the Bishop Fox DEF CON livestream.
And I'm Tom Eston, a VP of Consulting in Cosmos, also at Bishop Fox.
And it is an incredible honor to have Phil here as our guest. From having over 25 experience in the IT and cybersecurity industry, and of course, all of the teaching you do both through Pone School and through the local community colleges, which is a huge part of why I'm here today. And of course, your podcast, which I know Tom's been on.
I've been honored to be on your podcast, and you've been on my podcast,
Yes.
So we podcast swap all the time. But yeah, welcome.
Yeah, thanks.
Great,
it's an honor to be here, and I've been really bragging to people I know that being interviewed by one of my former students, I constantly brag about Lindsay. She's like one of the best students I ever had, and just to see how she's succeeding and just doing that at a young age. And one of the stories that I think is one of my favorites was at B-Sides Austin when she was speaking there. She was doing a talk on using game theory for security. The AV didn't work, and instead of panicking, she went to the whiteboard and drew it all out. So it's pretty amazing.
There was a lot of panicking too.
Oh,
I
I'm
just
sure there
tried
was.
to hold it.
You do a good job of hiding it.
And that was something an opportunity I definitely had because of your support and encouragement, and I've appreciated it so much all of these years. We would love to hear sort of about how you've created such a successful career in cybersecurity.
Sure. One of the things I would say that's helped me most in recent years is through the teaching, speaking at conferences, doing podcasts. Because one of the things I changed my mission in 2018 when I started teaching was to focus more on helping others. And when I did that, that's really kind of brought me a lot of success. Part of it's from exposure, and some of it, I think, just the universe rewards you for stuff, because I really love helping people. And in 2018, one of the things I did, I was a really competitive person. When I worked in jewelry sales, I was always number 1 and number 2 salesperson each month. When I was consulting, my bonus was based on billable hours. So I wouldn't come to summer camp because since I did Wi-Fi application network pen test, sometimes I would get 3 or 4 week long projects, and sometimes they paid better than the typical percentage. So I wouldn't take vacation until slower times of the year. So I wanted to hit those numbers and stuff. But in 2018, when I got into teaching, I kind of looked at my wife, what she was doing. She was teaching an ESL course. For those who don't understand ESL, it's English as a second language. She was teaching to people from Mexico and other Latin American countries that were, just immigrated to the US. And so I saw what she was doing, the impact she was making on her students. And I looked at my life and looked at the legacy I had. I was a power lifter, had a family, a great daughter and all this, but I really wasn't making an impact. So I figured I need to turn things more towards the strengths. I'm a good listener, coach, and the world needs good coaches and teachers and mentors. So I turned my focus that way. And it's been a great experience. It's kind of funny because when I started Pone School and started teaching, had less free time to do stuff, I used to watch movies, and I would watch at least 100 per year in movie theaters. And I started looking at my list at one of the Pone School meetings, and I thought, I'm not going to hit 100 movies this year. But the thing about it was I was a lot happier. I don't have problems with depression, but there's times that you're not always happy. But I noticed when I started mentoring, I was happy more of the time.
Yeah, that's awesome. So what are some, I guess, I think all of us, fail at some point in our careers, right? Have you had any failures that have maybe changed kind of your approach and maybe your career?
Yeah, one of the things I like to share, and I think it would be a good topic for a talk, was some of the things that's interesting to see people in their careers. Since I come from a pro wrestling background, you look at Hulk Hogan. He wanted to be a rock star, but if that guy would have been an actual musician, he may have not reached the success that he did. So sometimes we fail and we think it's a bad thing, but sometimes it leads us to where we truly fit. So, I tried pro wrestling, that really didn't work out, and other things, and so it just kind of led me into going back to school, to trade school. I learned AutoCAD, and then I found out about IT, shifted to IT, and I just kind of followed my passion. I was interested in security. I moved into security, then into pen testing. So I've kind of followed that, and it's helped a lot. But yeah, failures, you definitely, and one of the things I think people need to do with failures is I really would like to see people share that more, because sometimes people give this Instagram perspective. Everything's good, but they don't put the bad times. And you're helping others out when you realize that my life's not perfect, so they can kind of relate and say, okay, there's nothing wrong with me, this is normal, this happens to everyone. So I think really we should be transparent with those failures.
That's really important and very powerful. I think particularly with, a lot of us share our research and our passion on social media, and we should be more forthright with the struggle that it takes to get there. And sort of in a similar vein, as both a pen tester and a teacher, how do you stay current with the latest tools and trends, and find different things to learn about?
Sure. One of my main resources from the beginning, although it's kind of iffy if it'll be around, Twitter. So that was how I found X. Who knows what it's called? And one of the things I joke about is, it would have been better when Elon walked in with the sink and said, "Let that sink in." He should have walked in with a toilet, because that was.
I like that.
But yeah, that was one of my main resources, because I found a lot of people. That's probably how I discovered Bishop Fox. One of the things I love in several marketing teams I've worked with, I've recommended them because they're always focused on the CISO persona. But a lot of times these salespeople don't realize, okay, it's not the CISO that's going to evaluate the product. Mm-hmm. They don't understand it. They're going to pass that on to one of their subject matter experts or one of their direct reports. So they don't focus on that persona. And I've told them, when you're sharing tools, blog posts on how to do these things, maybe you're not directly affecting CISOs or whatever, but if you come up and ask me who we need to get to do pen testing, then that's who I think of. And this is even other firms too, and people that I've followed. So through like Twitter, all these researchers will share stuff there before you see it anywhere else. They'll share tools, or people that may not be as well known, you find some good information there. So that's really how I got connected to the InfoSec community, just from like Twitter. And that's one of the main resources. And then just some of the different local meetups and conferences and stuff.
Nice. So you've been in the pen testing industry for quite a while. What do you think of the current state of pen testing, and where do you see it kind of evolving over the next couple of years?
Sure. Some of the things I see that are good and bad. One of the things when I started pen testing in 2012, it seemed like compliance pen testing really drove pen tests. It really helped the industry. So I'm sure a lot of people picked up business just because of PCI. One of the bad side effects is companies wanting to get pen tests done for PCI, and they really don't consider the big picture. And I think they're missing out. I think the narrow scope on pen tests, just doing the minimal, not leveraging things like social engineering or phishing campaigns. I think some of these phishing tools have kind of hurt that. And if you're running those automated tools, you're only going to see if someone clicks on something. You're not going to say what happens if there's a payload. You're not testing that. So I think companies are missing out on that. So some of the narrowed scope of things. But one of the things I think is exciting is to see the evolution of tools over the years. And some people are afraid of AI and machine learning, but I think it's really going to make some really cool tools, because you think at one time at pen testing, you didn't have exploit frameworks like Metasploit, or you didn't have Nessus for like vulnerability scanning. You had to do a lot manually, but that helped automate what you're doing and scale, because if you're doing everything totally manually, and if you got a very big scope, it's going to take forever. So I can see like Metasploit evolving to where it has some enhanced EDR bypass capabilities that makes it easier, less manual. And then you're able to take some of the junior level pen testers, get them up to speed quicker, and just make your job easier, and you'll be able to thoroughly test environments more. And you see things also like the breach and attack simulation tools that are out there now too. People can leverage that for purple teaming, and you can take some people that are not as highly skilled, bring them into that, let them learn, and then evolve into like pen testers or red teamers.
Yeah, I think you like me, and I'm sure Lindsay as well, like we all kind of welcome our robot overlords, right? In a lot of ways.
Yeah, it makes me think someone recently said that some comedian or something said that they're nice to their home assistant, so that way when the robot uprising comes, they'll take pity on them.
That's right.
Always tell ChatGPT, please and thank you.
It's kind of funny to tell Alexa thank you sometimes, because she'll say, "Oh, thank you." Or the response back is kind of funny.
I think that's a very good point that you made about the rise of these tools, particularly AI-based ones, definitely make it easier for people to break into the industry. And you co-authored your book, The Pen Tester Blueprint: Starting a Career as an Ethical Hacker, which is just a phenomenal guidepost for breaking into the field, and actively generate just an abundant amount of cybersecurity education. What keeps you motivated? I know we've touched on that a little bit. And do you have any advice for people looking to start sharing educational content?
Sure. The thing that keeps me motivated, there's times that I'll run my podcast, and then with everything else, you think, man, this is kind of tough. Sometimes you don't feel like doing it, but then I'll go to a conference. And I had a good example. I went to Hack SpaceCon. There was a couple that came to the conference. He was listening to my podcast, so they showed up for the workshop since I was there. And what was really cool is he was a construction engineer, and he's going to school for cybersecurity. When he walked away, his wife said, "Thank you for creating your podcast. There's times I can't encourage him, but your podcast does." And so when I say this is not me, this is my guests sharing their stories, because one of the nice things about the diversity of stories is there's something someone's going to relate to. Some of the episodes is not relatable to many people, but one episode I had was with a former coworker that he got his first pen testing role when he was over 50 years old. He came from a CAD drafting background, and then there was someone that watched his episode of the podcast that was a CAD drafter wanting to move into cybersecurity, so it encouraged them. I have people all the time that are saying, I'm 30, 40, or 50 years old. Am I too old to get into cybersecurity? And I had someone on my podcast that was an esthetician. So she worked over 20 years in the beauty industry. So around 40, she went back to school, got a degree in associates in IT, and then one in cybersecurity, and started a successful career. So one of the things, the goals of the podcast is to encourage people and show them that it can be done. And one of the analogies I like to use is like a sports kind of analogy. When records are broken, some whatever record for what sport is not broken for one time and for a long time, someone finally breaks it, all of a sudden everyone's breaking records. It's not that people weren't capable, it's they believe that they're capable, and then everyone's doing it. So when as anyone in cybersecurity, we should encourage other people. There's such a skill shortage, and just in general, you should be good people and help. But when you encourage others to let them know that they can do it, that's really cool. And that's one of the things that continues to keep me doing that. So the book and podcast, I run into people that I never would have met, never would have known of me, and I'm able to reach them and help. So the feedback that I get from that is what keeps me going.
That's awesome. So before we wrap up, you also have one of the most interesting backgrounds. Before you got into all of this, you were a pro wrestler, and there is a story about how you wrestled a bear. So you have to tell our audience, how did you wrestle a bear?
So yeah, I was back in my pro wrestling days. I didn't wrestle enough to make a living off of it, so I was lucky to wrestle once a week. So I was a bouncer in a nightclub in Denton, Texas called the Yellow Rose Country and Western Club. And they had bands like Thursday through Saturday. Sundays it was too expensive to bring a band in because there was not very many people there, so they'd have special events. And they decided to bring in this wrestling bear. So it was open to anyone to wrestle, but since I was a hometown guy, worked at the bar and was a pro wrestler, they decided to take one of my wrestling promo pics and the bear's picture and create these posters to bring people in. So anyone that wanted to wrestle the bear was allowed to, and so they did. And so actually they talked me into wrestling the bear, and actually wrestled him twice. So how I know that from the picture I have, that was the second time I wrestled, is they gave a t-shirt to whoever did the best that said, "I wrestled Samson the bear and lost."
Nice.
So it also had won a bar tab too. So after wrestling the bear the first time, I thought, that's impossible. I'm not going to do that again. And so after the bar tab, the owner of the nightclub comes up, "Hey, Phil, would you wrestle the bear again?" "Sure."
That's so awesome.
That's such a cool story. One, because you wrestled a bear, but also it really highlights what you were saying about all of the incredibly diverse backgrounds that people coming into this industry can have. And who knows, there may be a bear wrestler right now watching this who really wants to get into pen testing. Thank you again to everybody who's tuned in, and thank you so much for being here,
Thank
Phil.
you. It's been an honor.
We'll be back with the Bishop Fox DEF CON live stream after this break.